Shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to begin by giving our praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rach Kodash. Double honors to the elders and to the apostles of the millstone, and enough respect to the brothers that they're pushing and spreading the gospel of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai to the folkness of the world. Now, through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, I wanted to do a quick lesson on a series of articles that just came out, breaking news, and Lord willing, this be edifying. But before I get into it, I want to begin in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 3, verse 17. It says, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman unto the house of Israel, and therefore hear the word at my mouth, and give them warning from me. Okay? And the word from the mouth of the Lord is the scriptures that we read in there. All right? That's why it's called the word of God. And so when we go through, all these teachings, the breakdowns, and, all the many different ways that we have preached the prophecy that's written up in the scriptures and related it to our times and insisted on that being a true meaning, people didn't take it to heart, right? But this was a warning from the Lord. When the Lord sends his prophets out there to warn the people, they ought to warn the nation of Israel day in and day out, whether they like it or not, right? That's why, some prophets ended up, being in prison and beaten and even being martyred. Because when the people warned them to stop, preaching of the word, they didn't take heed, and they just kept doing it. And then, whatever happened then. But at the end of the day, the warning from the Lord, no man can stop it. Right? That's why the book of Amos, I believe the 3rd chapter, it says, when the Lord speaks, who can but prophesy? There's nothing anyone can do but prophesy. Right? Let's get it right now. Amos 3. Verse 7 says, surely, Amos 3 and 7, surely the Lord Yahweh will do nothing, but he revealeth his secret unto his servants the prophets. The lion has roared, and who will not fear? The Lord Yahweh hath spoken, and who can but prophesy? And that's just a natural, course of event in the world. Prophecy is just a part of our lives. And whoever the Lord puts that responsibility upon, no one can stop it. Not with threats, not with, physical obstacles, not with lies, and not even with intentions to upset prophecy, because that's what these elites try to do. They want to achieve the good things about your future and do away with the bad things, you see? But what they don't understand is that it was prophetic for them to receive the kingdom that they have. It was prophetic for them to be rich. It was prophetic for them to make war against the saints and prevail. And in all this prophecy, they knew, and even at a certain point, they admitted that the Lord has set them up for that. When you read the journal of Cortez, he specifically says that the Lord has given him, the Issacharites for him to conquer. So at that point in prophecy, or the good things in their future, they loved it and they embraced it. And they will call themselves chosen of God, and then they would even say they believe in the Lord. But when it's time for them to receive the bad things, that's why the book of Job, he told his wife, that foolish woman, no one just receives good things. There's going to be good, and then there's going to be bad, right? He says, shall we receive only good from the Lord? And the nation of Israel, we have received the good and the bad. We have received the scourges of the Lord, and we have received the bad more than the good. We are looking forward to the good, but you have these Edomites out here who, when we prophesy, they always think themselves to be above the will of the Lord. They always think they can accomplish something that no one in the world has even accomplished, even the sons of God. So the heathens were not able to accomplish it, but they think they can accomplish it. And Jake wasn't able to accomplish it. Hey, you read on history, And when what do you call it? When the book of Daniel said that the city was going to fall to Rome, you had the Zealots out there and even the Israelites in the army who tried to fight the Romans. But what happened? The Lord still gave the victory to the Romans. And so, all this to say, right? That's why it says the lion has roared and who will not fear. When a lion roars, naturally it strikes fear in people. You know, sometimes you go to the zoo, and I remember going to the zoo, even behind the bars, that roar will still scare the shit out of you. And so, just like how it's a natural response to fear the roaring of a lion, when the Lord speaks, you just have to accept prophecy. And no matter how many, it doesn't matter how often you want to fight it. It doesn't matter how mad you get. It doesn't matter what kind of horrible intentions you have against his messengers. It will come to pass. And so, Ezekiel 3:17, Son of man, I have made thee a watchman. So those of us who the Lord has bestowed, right, the responsibility of being a watchman, a prophet unto the house of Israel, we ought to do our jobs properly, right? And we have to do our job with gladness. Like Yahushua said, you ain't supposed to forsake your first love. Do this work because you love the Lord. Don't do it because it's a burden, right? The book of Malachi talks about that. There are some people who they follow the law, but then they will say the law is too burdensome. And then that's when the Lord, let me see right now. I forgot which. Let me see. It's I believe it's in the first or second chapter, or it could be, but it talks about I don't want to go looking for it right now, but they said it right that the commandment of the Lord was too much for them, and so they would rather forsake it, and they will go, establishing their own righteousness. And so the book of Malachi pretty much was just the Lord, telling Israel that he doesn't want any temple sacrifices or anything like that. Jake is so far gone that he wants to hide his face from the nation of Israel. And that's pretty much what the whole book of Malachi is about. But, when this unfortunate message upon Israel was declared, there was a hope attached to it. And that was the coming of Yahushua. And yeah, so okay, so in doing our job as a watchman, what's the latest news? Well, one of them is, Trump announced with Iran that they have came up with a peace deal, and once that peace deal was announced, the price of oil dropped. But it dropped, but then come to find out that just today, a few hours ago, there was another strike, right? That's why it says U.S. says it launched a self-defense strike in Iran as peace negotiations drag on. And then, there's another claim where Trump says that Iran's enriched uranium must be destroyed or handed over to the U.S. Now, this was one thing that they brought up to Iran, and Iran simply said that they weren't going to do that. But now America's pushing for it. So what does that tell us? That tells us that, they're trying to get a peace deal or whatever it is that they're trying to do. It's not, it's dragging on, right? Had it been their wish, Iran would have just simply complied, and then they would just like live their days in peace and prosperity and just kept making money. But Iran is not complying, right? And that's even pursuant to the book of Second Ezra, the 15th chapter, with the Carmanians and the dragons of Arabians, and them remembering their nature, and their nature being a wild man, right? And so they being uncompromising, Esau doesn't like that, so he has to go out and fight. He fights, and he expects them to just, surrender or at least concede the war, but they don't. They just keep on fighting. And then they kind of find out that Iran can actually wait them out, because Iran's core structure is always underground, and they have, they have these different, what do you call it? They have these different military organizations that operate independently without any oversight or command from the commander in chief. So they have all these things going on, and it's just pissing Esau off. And it seems like the situation over there can only be resolved, or at least the goal that they're trying to achieve in the Middle East, which is complete peace and the land of Israel. It seems as though the only way they're going to achieve that goal is to go all out and start World War III and implement the MOTB. And but to implement the MOTB, they're gonna have to start World War III. But they just can't seem to find a safe way to start World War III. That's why these elites out here they have all these bunkers that are to protect them from the nuclear blast, which the Lord said that they will escape it. Those bunkers in there will sustain them, but it's only so that they will be made fresh and fattened when we are put in power and we pluck them out of every hole that they're hiding. And so, yeah, so that's one article where they want more than they can have, which is the enriched uranium. And let me tell you this, man. If Iran was not trying to build nuclear weapons back then, they're definitely trying to build it now, because they're taking their playbook from North Korea. It's the same thing that happened with North Korea, and they were just being, there was a lot of back and forth between them and the West. And then once they tested their nuclear missiles and shot it off, everybody left them alone. So these nations are learning, right? Pakistan did the same thing. India did the same thing, So all these nations are learning, especially Iran. They are learning that they need nuclear weapons in order to have a peace of mind, right? In order to be, to free themselves from the bullying, or the scriptures talks about the oppression or the sword of Esau, to free themselves from that. And then, so Trump outlines options for disposal of Iran's enriched uranium, and of course they're not going to agree to that, right? Because a nuclear weapon gives him an edge against countries that would try to take advantage of them. So they're never going to give that up. And so the war is going to drag on and on and on and on until it escalates, and it becomes a nuclear world war. And then so there's that going on. Oh, and also Trump went to China. I think I already mentioned this in a video, but he went to China and he tried to convince them to side with them against Iran. And China told him they don't even want to begin to have that conversation until America, turns its back on Taiwan, pretty much, because America has made a lot of investment in Taiwan on account of it making 90% of all the chips in the world, on all the microchips in the world. And they want that market. So they want to, China wants Taiwan, but America doesn't want China to take Taiwan. But if the point here is that America they are just neck deep in confusion. Okay, They are doing too many things at once, and they are being overwhelmed. And or at least they are being overwhelmed in a manner of the measure of extent that they want to take things, right? Because they want to do things by just a series of strikes here and there, and you know, um, some politics, but it's not working. So they're gonna have to step it up, and once they do, it's then gonna drag in all these nations, Gog and Magog, for example, Russia, and they will be a guard onto Iran. And when Russia gets in there and goes into confrontation, direct confrontation with America, all these nations will join in on it. And so, as watchmen, we have to watch out for things like this. And this is pretty much, there's a lot of things going on. And, I hope brothers were edified. So in closing, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakha Kodash, Shalom, Yahweh, Bashmir, Shai, Brakatham, Toya, Akim, Senakos, that are listening in truth and sincerity. May the blessing of Allah be upon our house. And until next time, Shalom.